Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to be talking about and reviewing the module adventure D1 Descent into the Depths of the Earth. Now, this originally came out in August of 1978, as you can see on the screen here, but it has morphed quite a bit over the years, and we're going to talk about all of that, everything in here, all the Easter eggs, all the encounters, and more. So stay tuned and don't go away. All right, before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like this video. Hit the like button if you have any questions or comments. Please leave a question or comment. Don't forget to share this video, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Okay, like I said, D1 came out in August of 1978, but the cover was changed, and D2, the Shrine of the Kuo-toa, which was a separate adventure, and we're going to talk about that in another video, was added. And as you can see, D1 says first of 3 modules, because there was a D3, the Vault of the Drow. These are all extensions to the G1, 2, and 3 series. They're all connected to the Giant series, which was the Hill Giant adventure, the Frost Giant adventure, and the Fire Giant adventure. All right, to give you a little context in time of where this particular adventure fits, we're going to go back to December 1977. That was the publication date for the Monster Manual. That was the first book that came out for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. The Player's Handbook hadn't come out yet. The Dungeon Master's Guide came out yet. It's still, you know, the only set of rules that we have here is the Monster Manual itself. Then in June of 1978, the Player's Handbook is released, but this was actually released a little earlier in a pre-release so that some of the fans could see it. But this did get its first printing publication in June of 1978. This was actually the first set of rules that we got for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but the combat rules in this were still a bit sketchy. Those were to come in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So up until this point, which you can see here is July 1978, we had both the Monster Manual and the Player's Handbooks published. But Gary started on, and that is Gary Gygax, of course, if you are not familiar with that name. Gary Gygax had started on the Dungeon Master's Guide, but in the middle of writing it, he put it down to write some adventures, and that first adventure that he wrote was G1. We've already went over this. I've got a previous video. I'll put the link below. And he started on this one, and he started on G2 and G3. So G1 was the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, G2 was the Frost Giant, and G3 was the Fire Giant. And he also was starting on D1 through 3. Now, you could see, again, the date here was July 1978, which means that he was working on these while he was probably working on the Player's Handbook, because the Player's Handbook only came out the month before this. And I imagine that he would work on a book, put it down, because he got sick of writing rules, and then he would pick up and write an adventure. But this was the first one to come out. So we had 2 rule books, Monster Manual and the Player's Handbook out at. So then again, after G1 through 3 came out, the Monster Manual and the Player's Handbook had come out. Then we get D1 August of 1978. Shortly after that, we got D2 and D3. And we still hadn't gotten the Dungeon Master's Guide. So a lot of the combat in here wasn't very well defined, and a lot of none of the magic items were very well defined at all, except for what was left over from some of the previous white box and first edition, because this is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So the first edition versions of Dungeons and Dragons. Then eventually we got the Dungeon Master's Guide, which came out in August of 1979. So almost, well, actually a full year after G1 through 3 and D1 through 3 came out. So this one was a long time coming. It took him quite a while to write this. And this had all of the actual combat tables in it, and it also had all of the magic items in it, which were important things as descriptors because many of those things appeared in D1 through 3. And finally, on our journey through history, we come to the color version of this where D1 through 2, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, and the Shrine of the Kuo-toa were combined, and we got a new cover on this, and this was in May of 1981. So this had been out for about 3 years almost before they decided to put color covers on all of these modules, and they did rewrite a bunch of them. Many of them were that monochrome color that you saw before, and then they changed them to this color, and they did multicolor, and they got some new artists. This, I believe, was Bill Wilmingham, and a lot of different really good art was placed on the covers of these modules. All right, so here we have the cover, and this is the new cover. Remember, this is from May of 1981, but the original D1 was written in August of 1978. So here we have the cover. This cover, I spoke incorrectly before. This is not Bill Wilmingham. This is Jim Roslov. You can see here his signature here. We've got, looks like some fighters, maybe a wizard in the back, magic user at the time, fighting some Kuo-toa. There is the Kuo-toan god in the background. This would be from Shrine of the Kuo-toa. This was an adventure for characters levels 9 through 14. And you can see here the original stamp, 1978, and then 1981, which was this cover, color cover edition. The second page, we get a very nice picture of some Drow by Bill. This is Bill Wilmingham. So this is Bill Wilmingham. This is by Gary Gygax, an adventure for 9th to 12th level characters. Again, we see 1978 and 1981. We've got the address for TSR Hobbies in Lake Geneva. And this one goes through and it says it is an adventure that goes with G1 through 3, D3, which is Vault of the Drow, and Queen of the Demon Web Pits, which came out in 1980. But that is another video that we're going to go through. So here we've got the first page of the adventure. This is actually like the second page of the adventure itself, but this is the first text page. And I've got a few things I want to point out. They give the kind of the background of what's happened so far with the giants and how the Drow have been influencing the giants to make warfare on the human and elven races. I haven't really said why. It's probably to get revenge against the elves for the Drow. But it says here, many of the important Drow fled away to the northwest. The escape route, a seemingly natural passage, a full 30 feet wide, extending endlessly under the earth. Now, why? And of course, the title of this adventure is Descent into the Depths of the Earth. Why did Gary call this the Earth? This is set in Greyhawk, and the world that Greyhawk is on is called Oerth. And that fact had already been established. So Oerth was first introduced in Dragon Magazine #1 in 1976. So why use the term Earth versus Oerth? I don't know, maybe it was a marketing issue, and that's why Gary decided to use Earth instead of Oerth, because obviously Greyhawk is not on Earth. And I think he probably figured more people would recognize and sympathize with the term Earth, and so it might help with some marketing. So in this next part, it says, even mules across the dangerous area without any difficulty. Pursuit of these creatures is necessary, for unless their location and strength are known, the Drow can continue to strike where and whenever they like without fear of counterattack or reprisal. Fortunately, the party discovered a map of the maze of tunnels. So I have a note here for both of these that say party motivation. So was this the motivation behind the players going into this tunnel they found in the Hall of the Fire Giant King to pursue the Drow, now that they know that the Drow are more than likely the villains behind the attacks of the giants. And in this section here, we see that Gary says, perhaps certain of the elven folk will help, for the Drow besmirch and stain their race, and such aid, whether in magical items, personnel, or both, might well prove the difference between success and failure, life and death. So this is insinuating that the players are going to come out of the Hall of the Fire Giant King. They're going to let the elves, whoever those are, maybe there's an elven kingdom there or something, know that the Drow are involved. Maybe the Drow haven't been seen for dozens of years, decades, hundreds of years, I don't know. And that they are going to beseech the elves for aid in their quest to stamp out the Drow threat that is coming from the depths of the earth. So possibly with the help of the elves, whatever elf kingdom you want to put into your world, you could be getting aid. I mean, he does go through like drinking water and equipment and things like that. How are you going to, it's an unknown place. Descent into the depths of the earth. It's very unknown. Where's the water source? Where's the food source? How much supplies are you going to have to bring? So maybe with the help of the elves and the motivation from the elves to get revenge against the Drow, and serving as a kind of center headquarters for the players to get supplies if they need to come back out, if they are ever going to come back out, then that could be a motivation for the players. Now, in this cautionary paragraph down here, it talks about the minimum levels, how many characters should be in the party, that the players need to be able to resupply. It says a relatively small party can succeed only if they can return periodically to some base. Now, it doesn't say where that base is, but it's some base, and once we see the bigger map, you're going to see why that's going to be very hard to do. But some base in order to recover and regain spells and equipment. So this is the first adventure to really focus on kind of exploration in a sandbox environment. Now it goes through what kinds of players should be players of the above average ability who have characters of high level, 9th or 10th minimum, counting multi-class characters as roughly equal to a single based character 2 levels higher than the multi-class character. The module is designed for characters of about 10th level with a party size of 7 to 9. If the players you plan to have adventure herein are of lesser level or they lack numbers of magic items, there must be some elven aid available. Again, that is, part of the motivation for the players to go forward into this. So we get the start paragraph, which is a description of the passageway beneath the halls of King Snur Ironbelly, the king of the fire giants, that runs to the northwest, and it goes on for some time. So it's 12 to 16 feet wide for some 300 feet, then it suddenly widens to 30 feet or more in places, and obviously hewn, meaning it's man-made, and goes almost perfectly northwest, sinking slowly in gentle slopes and natural terraces. So it goes, and it goes, and it goes. So now, notes for the Dungeon Master, we get a kind of a treatise about footing in treacherous places and how long it's going to take to move through the area. So our movement rates are listed here. So you could see here on the left side of the page, I've put the hex map up. Now this is the Dungeon Master's hex map. The players get a map that is very similar to this, except that they only see those things that are in the middle. It's shaded, and not everything is there. They don't see all these tunnels that are off to the sides. They don't see that there might be alternate routes to go from one of the encounter areas detailed in a module. They could actually skip some of these, but they don't see where those tunnels go. But this is the full Dungeon Master's map. Now, each hex is 1 mile, and Gary does give us the movement rate. So it says, assume the maximum rate of travel is 1 mile, 1 hex per day per 1 inch of base movement, and 1 inch of base movement in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was essentially 10 feet. For those of us that play later editions like 3rd through 5th edition. And movement rate of the slowest member of the expedition. And this rate is only if unnecessary delays and careful map making are avoided. Reduce movement by 1 mile for every hour of delay and assume that careful mapping will slow the party to 6 miles per day maximum travel. Now, my question here is, what happens if the PCs do not map? So he doesn't talk about the consequences of that. He only says that they have to slow down. But there needs to be a reason why the players are slowing down to map. I would say that if they don't map, they are most likely going to get lost when they come to an area that has many tunnels that branch off from the main tunnel. As long as they're in a single tunnel, it's fine. But if they're not mapping and they're trying to maximize their movement speed, that could be a problem. The next section talks about what happens if you come upon crevices, crevasses, sinkholes, chasms, things like that, and that there is a chance that you could be slipping and falling into these if you do not take the proper care when approaching them. So crevasses are 110 to 300 feet deep. Any fall is fatal. Let me repeat that. Any fall is fatal. So there's no, I'm going to fall 100 feet, take 10d6, and my character is so tough they're going to survive it. Nope. Doesn't matter. You fall in these, you are gone. And then it talks about adventurers roped together, using poles, etc. Otherwise, the chance if they don't do these things is a 1 in 20 chance of slipping when trying to move around or otherwise passing over a crevasse. Any slip will precipitate a fatal fall. So that's, again, fatal fall. Then there's sinkholes, 10 to 80 feet deep. While there's no chance of slipping into them if the party is running in haste or traveling without light. Remember, there's no light here. There's some light in areas from like some phosphorescent lichen and fungi, but for the most part, there's no light here. So they have to have a light source as well. So it says treat sinkholes as pits with a 1 in 3 chance of falling in, 1 in 2 on a d6. If they're doing one of these things, damage is sustained as 1d6 per 10 feet. And then Gary goes into a very detailed description about ceiling heights and widths of tunnels and things like that. And then we get a little bit about the first encounter hex, which is D3. And the way that you would read these maps is it goes from A down here all the way up to, it looks like B3. And you would read A across, and then you would go to the bottom and you'll see that there's numbers at the bottom, and you'll read those numbers diagonally. And so our first encounter that we have is this first hex at the very bottom down here, this first darkly colored in hex, which says encounter area detailed in a module of this series, and that is here, hex D3, which cannot be avoided. So there's a tunnel that goes straight to it, and it is a Drow checkpoint. And then the second encounter, which is going to be that second hex along the path, is hex M12, and it is a secret advanced post for illithid mind flayers. So this is not the first appearance of mind flayers. That was in G3, the Fire Giant module, but it is one of the major ones, and a place the Drow are aware of, and if the expedition kills the mind flayers and prove their deed to any Drow they happen to meet, It is 90%, Gary loved to put like percentages in, 90% probable the Dark Elves will be friendly with the party despite any past conflicts, and give them a black medallion. This is the first mention of these medallions that a lot of the Drow we're going to find that they're wearing. So just a little introduction to these first two kind of encounters. And then he goes in to talk about the Drow and what they wear and what their attitudes are. And he talks about some of the relationships between the Drow and the Illithids, or the Mind Flayers, and how they will deal with the party. And then we go into some verbiage about how random encounters happen. So it says here, generally one check for a random encounter will be made each mile, that's a hex, of tunnel traveled through, with 1 check per hour being made in the terminal area. So if you're at the end of a tunnel and you're going back the other way, remember you're going to go up to 6 hexes a day. But if you're going back, you're going to check every hour in that terminal area. And then finally, 1 check per night being made when expedition encamps for a night's rest. So if they're just moving along in a main tunnel, then we're going to get 1 check per hex, and then we're going to get another check at night. And then there are these geomorphs. So let's talk about the geomorphs. So D1 came and D2 came with these geomorphs, which were just general maps that Gary made that could be used for some of these encounters. So it says you will observe that only piece 2, which is the piece in the middle there, is used for encounters listed herein. The other pieces are simply added to be for use as desired when random encounters with wandering monsters occur. They can also be used with the other 2 modules in this series, which would be D2 and D3. If you desire larger encounter pieces, feel free to draw up your own in any manner which you believe superior, to be sure that such pieces generally conform to the circumstances of the module encounter. So we've got piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we've got a tunnel. So you could have a random encounter in the tunnel, and each one of these squares is 10 feet. It doesn't say that, but most of these modules, they were always 10 feet. And so the tunnel itself is anywhere from 30 to 40 or 50 feet wide. And then we've got these complexes of rooms. Number 2 is going to be the room that we're going to use for that Drow outpost, and also for the Mind Flayer outpost. And lastly, before we get into what the random encounters were, because there's a lot of Easter eggs in these random encounters, Gary put a note in here about travel, particularly about teleportation. And it says, beyond the first encounter area, teleportation over any distance greater than 1/2 mile will be impossible! Exclamation point. Inform any characters with this ability that they can feel magnetic forces, and that there are quotation marks. I'm making a finger quotation mark, which they know will certainly prevent normal teleportation. So I think at this point, Gary had encountered this with players before, and players, of course, will take advantage of it, and they're like, well, we just need to go to this one place. And there's a chance, even though we've never seen it, we know a little bit about it, there's a chance we'll get there without any mishaps. We'll just go and just decimate it and take it over and be done with it. And Gary wanted the hex crawl to happen. And these are higher level characters, so they absolutely will have access to a teleport spell. So he wanted to prevent that. There it is. So the players are not going anywhere unless they walk, unless they have a wish spell. And at this point, they're not high enough level for a wish spell. And here we have the random encounters, and there are 3 different tables. There's a primary passage table, there's a secondary passage table, and there's a tertiary passage table. And if you look on the hex map and you look down in this area down here, it's going to tell you what those are. There are primary passages, there are secondary passages, there are tertiary passages, there are secret tertiary passages, and then there are underground rivers that are here. And there's all kinds of passages all over the place. So depending on which passage the players are in, that is the table that you are going to roll on. So I just want to point out a few pertinent things that are in each one of these tables. One on the passage, the primary passage table, it's a 1 in 10 chance of an encounter. Remember, we get a check every hex, so it's a 1 in 10 chance every hex. It's a 1 in 10 chance when the players rest at night, or whenever they're going to rest. Whenever there is a rest period, it may not necessarily be at night. Whenever there is a rest period, you're going to do another check. And if they're at the end of a tunnel, then it's a check every hour, because they're coming back the other way. I guess danger was heightened if you were going down a tunnel all the way you came to a dead end and you were turning around and coming back. So on this first table, you would roll a d20 if you got that 1 out of 10 chance. And number 8 is a beholder. Just appears out of nowhere. This is a first appearance of beholder in a Advanced Dungeons & Dragons adventure. Just appears out of nowhere. Most of these have like drow patrols and drow merchants. There's some ghasts with troglodytes and trolls with troglodytes. The ghasts and the ghouls are all servants of the drow. Now, the secondary passage table, there's a 1 in 10 chance of encountering a monster. And again, you roll the d20. There, again, are a lot of drow patrols and merchant trains and things like that. But the thing I want to point out here is there's a chance on number 15 that you can get a fully formed purple worm. And this is the first appearance of a purple worm. And lastly, and most strangely, in the tertiary passages, there's a 1 in 12 chance of encountering a monster. And you will notice that there are less chances of encountering drow merchants or patrols. But the two that I want to point out, and I found very strange, there you could just run into a vampire, okay? Or you could run into a lich just walking around. I'm not really sure why there is a random vampire or a random lich. These are like major, like big bad evil guy villain monsters that could appear. So you would have to come up with some very quick explanations as to why a lich was just walking around in one of these side tunnels or was encountered in your wanderings through these cave passages. And then Gary goes into a lot of detail about the drow patrols and the drow merchants. So, we've got 3 types of patrols, male, female, and mixed. Goes into the details of the males. There's a magic user with a fireball with the males. With the females, there is a high-level priestess of Loth that is there. I mean, all of these guys have abnormally high armor classes too. And then the mixed will have males and females, plus they'll have, depending, some bugbears, trolls, and ghasts with them as well. And then we've got the drow merchants. And drow merchants, there's a male there, which is a cleric fighter. That was a little unusual. There was the spells there. And then they'll come along with a number of various merchants and followers with them too. You could do a die roll for the slave bearers, or it'd be a mixture of captives. We could have humans, elves, dwarves, whatever. They're going to have pack lizards with them. And then there was a treasure. So they have goods that were carried. There was a lot of treasure. You could really get some good stuff out of this. You rolled a 99 or 100, 1 ring, rod, staff, wand, miscellaneous magic item. Now keep in mind that the Dungeon Master's Guide had not been published at this point. So there was really no table, because there were tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide where you could roll for a ring or a rod or a staff or a miscellaneous magic item. Those don't exist at this point, so you would have to make something up. But special note about the cloaks, armor, and weapons, about the sunlight, we went over that in the giant modules. And of course, we get a lot of detail about the brooches, pins, medallions that the Drow of prominence are carrying on them. And he gives us a list of a number of different ones. I don't know how you get a D16, but there is a 1 through 16 chance of one of these. We've got brass links, russet enameled shelf fungi, bronze coiled whip. These pins are always well hidden on the person of the merchant. So they're something that, and he doesn't really explain it at this point, but spoiler, these are things that identify each Drow with a house or a noble lineage within the Drow society. And we finally get our first encounter. We're all the way over on page 6 right now, and we're finally getting to our first encounter. So a lot of description by Gary about how to move through, like the background of the adventure, how to move through, how to hex crawl, how to do the sandbox portion of this, the random encounters. A lot of that is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but again, the Dungeon Master's Guide hadn't come out yet at this point. We actually wouldn't be seeing the Dungeon Master's Guide for a year after this particular adventure was published. So I would really like to know how people played through this without having the Dungeon Master's Guide and having all of the to-hit tables and the saving throw tables and the details about combat and the details about initiative that were in there and the details about magic items that were in there. So a lot of that stuff had to be, a lot of those rules didn't exist and they had to be made up. Now, we're coming into encounter D3, and that is shown on this. So D3 is this bottom filled in hex down here. I can't get my cursor to go over that so we could point it out. But it's down here. It's this first one that's way down here. You can go over from D over here all the way across to over here, and you'll see that it is hitting the 3 going diagonally up. So it is a meeting place and a Drow checkpoint. So this is the first place that you're going to come along. It's 5 hexes in from the main tunnel coming out from the Hall of the Fire Giant King. And we are going to use the number 2 geomorph for this. So here is the geomorphs. It's the middle, in the middle column, number 2. And it tells us what's there. 2 separate patrol groups, males to the left, females to the right. I guess you would orient this in a certain way so that this would be going north-south. So you'd have to turn this counterclockwise 90 degrees. So there are 10 males. There's a magic user with the males. He's got lightning bolt, ice storm. Then there's the female contingent. And then there is this cannon, which is a 6th-level cleric. And she's got this short-handled sting slav that has these special glass globe missiles, and they explode. And you can actually roll to see if she misses where they go. But they explode in a cloud that is a 10-foot diameter with a height of 12 feet, and it is a vapor cloud covered droplets which make them shine and glow, causing a reduction in their armor placed by 1 to 4. The effect lasts for 2 to 5 turns, which turn was 10 minutes. And in addition, exposed, they have to make a saving throw versus poison. Those that fail are blinded in addition. So basically it burns their eyes. So this is a pretty nasty, it's a pretty nasty, not a magic item, but just a weapon that the Drow have. And I think this is one of the only places that you ever see it. And here we have that cleric's spells. So she's got things like Dispel Magic, resist fire, silence, things like that. And then we have the High Priestess, Valandril. She is a 9th level cleric. She is a special servant of the Fane. So this is the first time we're hearing this particular term, which is referring to the Fane of the Drow, which is like the Drow city. And she has a lurker cloak, which allows her to fly. She's got a bunch of different spells: cure critical wounds, cure serious wounds, poison, prayer, silence again, things like that. And it says if If for any reason the drow are seriously threatened, she will attempt to save herself by using a magical cloak, so her lurker cloak, to change into a lurker and fly off without notice or being noticed. For she is charged with reporting to the Fane any significant event which transpires after the fall of Snur, the fire giant king. That is, the ruin of Eklavdra's plans, for the latter is an opponent of the Fae. So Eklavdra is an opponent of the Fane. So the Fane, this drow enclave that's somewhere on this big hex map that we have, sent this patrol down here because they knew that Eklavdra had been working with the giants, and the interactions between the different drow factions, they all are, they're chaotic evil, so they're all against each other. So it sounds like Eklavdra was against this particular house that this Valandril high priestess belonged to. But they're here, and so if the players show up, they know that the fire giants are probably gone, and Eklavdra has probably failed in her attempts to get the giants to organize and attack the humans. And then finally, we get a little drib about the treasure here, and we get something about medallions. So we've got 2 black metal adamantite alloy medallions bearing a likeness of a spider on one side and a female drow on the other, which these are the 2 forms of Loth. Each is suspended by a fine loop of black chain. And then there's some scrolls, and we finally get, if the commanders are slain, the bodies searched carefully, the following brooches are discovered. On the male is a small brass wand inscribed with the drow runes Alaval. I don't know what that is at this point, and neither do the players, but it's the house that he belongs to, or the faction he belongs to. And on the female curate, which was that 6th level, a small blue-black mace inscribed with Despana. And on Valandril, that 9th level, is a golden spider pin with engraved runes which say in Drowic. So again, these are all in Drow, so you need to be able to read these. But the players are probably high enough at this point that they could get a comprehend languages. So her, this golden spider pin is Loth, Death Queen Mother, which is their god. So the next encounter is encounter M12. And again, if you go over to this side, over here, and you go up, you can go to M, which is right there, and you go straight across, and you go down to 12, and you go diagonally up, you'll find M12, which is that second dark hex that's there. And this is encounter M12. And again, we're going to use encounter piece 2, but this time we're going to reverse it. So it's the middle column, it's the middle geomorph map, number 2. And remember I said that we were going to turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise. This time maybe we turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise so that the players are coming in the other side. But this is the spy post of the Illithids, the Mind Flayers. This is the first time we've seen this term. It's in this module, not in the previous one. The previous one called them Mind Flayers. The Drow know they're here, but do not care to deal with it at this time due to the recent reverses suffered. And I'm not sure what that means. So, maybe that'll come out later on in this adventure. As will be usual throughout the Sunless World, phosphorescent lichens grow sparsely about the passages and cave here and make it possible for normal vision to function at up to 10 feet. So it's not super great light, but it is light. And then there are a bunch of rat men that work for the Mind Flayers here, were-rats. And they have 8 fellows that guard 2 Mind Flayers, 4 to one side and 4 to the other. So on one side is one Mind Flayer, on the other side is the other Mind Flayer. And they give the hit points and things like that. And then they say the stronger one, which is the one with 5 more hit points, is near the cave pool. The cave pool is at the north, kind of the top right corner up here. The Mind Flayer is questioning the Dark Elf. So they've got a Drow merchant captive. He's questioning this merchant about current alliances, power groups, and feuds between the Drow clans and the noble houses. If the Illithid gets any chance, he will kill the Drow so no tales can be carried by him. When the party is sighted, the Ratmen go out front, the Were-Rats immediately go, and then the Mind Flayers start mind blasting. I don't think they care if they mind blast their own Were-Rats. So, and then they will use domination as well. Now, in the treasure section of this, you find this dull olive cloak, which says, which does not radiate magic, but could be valuable if the party eventually attains module D3, which is the Vault of the Drow. And then we also have a couple potions and things like that, and a small silver disc, which is evidently a brooch of some sort, Drow Merchant Clan, and used in module D3. So we keep finding these brooches over and over and over again. At this point, I would hope that the players will catch on that they're going to need these at some point. So we're into page 8 of the module, and we finally get to the main cavernway. This is like the meat of the adventure itself, and it says key to the caverns and warrens of the troglodytes. However, the picture that here is not of troglodytes. It's of gargoyles. There's a ton of gargoyles in here. This is a pretty good picture, pretty cool. That was put in here black and white, and it kind of gives you a premonition of what you're going to be seeing. So this complex is found at Q 18 and 19. So here's Q right over on this side. So you follow it all the way across, and you go to the bottom, you go down over to 18 and 19, and you go diagonally up, and it is these 2 darkened hexes within here. And so we're roughly 20 hexes in. The M12 one you can actually get around. You can go out of some of the side tunnels that are in the D3 encounter, and you can go right around it. But there are some tertiary passages. You could meet a lich in some of those, so beware. You could get lost, and you could end up, way out over here, or way out over here, or up here, and have to backtrack and have to go through a whole bunch of random encounters. But the troglodyte warrens are in these 2 hexes, these 2 dark hexes along the shaded path. So here is the map of the troglodyte caverns or troglodyte warrens. It's huge. Again, I'm going to assume that each one of these squares is a 10-foot square. Now, there is a note at the top of this that says there are 2 entrances to the area not shown on the map. DM should assume that these are in, it's a secret entrance in area 4, down at the bottom left corner, and area 3031, which is up in the top right-hand corner of the map. So, big, giant map. One thing I do want to point out about this is all of these are open spaces. There's no really doors in here. So if you're coming in here and you're going to fight something, you're going to make a bunch of noise. And then everything else in this cavern complex, because that noise is going to echo everywhere, everything else in this cavern complex is going to know that something is up. And everything in here is kind of cooperating with each other. There's a few things in here that are not, but all of those things that are cooperating in here, which are servants of the Drow, could band together immediately and take and just descend upon you as one giant, almost army, and take you out. And so the players are going to have to be very, very careful how they traverse through this area. All right, so the first thing first is we have a wandering monster table. So there is a 1 in 12 chance every turn, every 10 minutes, that you are going to get a random encounter. So 1 through 4. So if you're in the left hand of the map, the western half, Drow, gargoyles, trolls. If you're in the right hand or the eastern side of the map, it's going to be troglodytes, bugbears, trolls, troglodytes. So equal chance for small, medium, or large train, and that's for these Drow merchants. So you go back to the big hex map random encounters, and you use the Drow merchant for this. So the first room that we come to, which is right at the entrance, is going to be entrance to the Grand Cavern. There are bugbears here that are sentries for the Drow. Now, I'm going to point one thing out here. It says the terrace ledges lead down to the glistening floor of this huge cavern, the ceiling of which drips with stalactites, the floor with stalagmites, and here and there, littered with broken stone, detritus and fallen stalactites, thick columns and great masses of ravak. I think this is a typo. I think they meant to say rock. Stretch all the way to the roof. So there's a lot of different stuff. We go into a description of how big the cavern is, which is the main chamber that is in the middle here. And there is an area B and an area D on this map. They're very hard to see, but they're there. And the B is where there are some bugbear sentries. And the D is where there are 4 such positions of D, and there are 3 such positions of B. And D is where there are some Drow fighters. And these are all sentries that if they detect something, like players marching down that central hallway, that central cavern tunnel with a light, stomping around, they're immediately going to go and they're going to warn everything else in this cavern complex, because pretty much everything in this cavern complex is connected. And then we get to number 2, which is right off of the main tunnel here in the bottom left-hand corner. The passage is filled with deposits of dripping water, and it's filled with piercers. So you come in, you don't know they're there, and they start dropping, and they start just blasting everybody. Then we come to number 3, which is, again, off of that area, and there is a lurker, but there's a scattering of crystals in this area. So that's kind of there's protruding crystals, and then there's some that actually have some worth, and they're gems here, and that I think that's kind of the bait to get the players to come in so that the trapper will come after them. But the trapper has no treasure, as the Drow recently took it. So there's a story behind that, I guess. And then we come to cavern number 4, which is this big side cavern on the bottom left down here. And again, it's, it did note that there was a secret entrance to coming into the cavern complex somewhere in here. So you, as the DM, would just put it wherever. And hanging out in here are 15 gargoyles who perch. So there's a ledge around the outer lip of this room, and these gargoyles are perching on this ledge that is there. Number 5, which is a pretty big cavern, and it is off to the side over here. So it's part of this whole cavern complex on this side of the map. Number 5 is a very large purple worm who's recently moved here to lay her eggs. There are 6 eggs, which hatch in 3 turns. Now, that's not 3 rounds. That's 3 10-minute spaces of time, which is 30 minutes. So there is no treasure inside the worm, but there are 8 of her castings about the place. So I guess that's shed skin. And the 6th contains some gems and some vials of a holy water. But this is the first appearance of a purple worm, and possibly the players might have to fight some purple worm babies here too. I would say that this timer for these 3 turns starts when the players basically get to the entrance to the troglodyte warrens. Then we come to number 6, which we find is in the northwest complex up in this corner up here. And this is a drow enclave area. It's a cavern where the drow are hanging out in an outpost. There are males and females. And of course, there is a commander here. So the males all have their hand crossbows. They have their regular drow spells that they all can cast. The females have crossbows, hand crossbows, and they have javelins and addle-addles. And then the commander here has this thing called the Death Lance, which is a 10-foot spear which discharges a negative force when it hits. The force causes 3 to... Gary loved to do D4s. I don't know why. This is 3 D4s of hit points of damage. In addition to normal damage, any opponent so struck must save versus poison or lose 1 to 4 life energy levels. So it did energy drain, which was nasty. And you had to get that level back. And then the lance has 6 charges. So I guess once those charges are gone, it's gone, and then it has to be recharged. And then this is the weapon she will take with her when she goes to the drow area to the northwest to inform her superiors, which I'm going to guess is up in this area over here. And then her mount is a nightmare, stabled at the back of the cave. And then each female that's here, these are these 8 third-level ones, have these spells. So there's a very nasty drow commander of 6th level with a -4 armor class, riding a nightmare with this energy-draining Death Lance. Very nasty stuff. Then we go into all the treasure that the drow have. So they have 1 to 4 platinum pieces per level of experience each. And then the commander has some gems and then has this small pin of bronze with a nightmare's head of Naquar inscribed in Drowic on the reverse. So we get another one of these brooches here. The males sleep in the southern cave below 6. And so there's like 2 cave complexes there. And there are some strange straps. These are gear for the pack lizards and long metal hooked poles guiding ankuses. And I had to look that word up. That's an actual word. And it's a word that is used for a metal hooked pole that will move elephants around. So Gary loved to pull stuff out of the dictionary and just throw it in. And then we go through a whole bunch of other treasure and potions and things. Then we come to number 7, which is the sunken cave. And this is a big one. I really didn't understand just why this was here. But there's 2 narrow flights of stair-like terraces that lead down about 20 feet to debouch, another word that I am sure Gary looked up in the Webster's Dictionary, which means to exit into a low-ceilinged cave, which appears totally dark and deserted. And this is an illusion, for it is the lair of a lich with a +3 ring of protection. This horrid creature normally rests on the ledge. Rests. So why is this lich here? Why is it just resting? Why is it just hanging out on the southern tip of the place? And it will maintain the illusion and not attack any intruders unless they are using magic spells of any sort or are obviously detecting magic. So this lich just wants to be left alone. Here we got a picture of the lich here. And there's magic mouths all over the room. We don't see that until we get to the next. And Gary gives us a little bit of a description of how the lich is going to use spells and things like that. I wouldn't do that. But then we get the lich's name, Asperdes, and that he's cast 600 magic mouth spells in various portions of the lair. Walls, floor, ceiling, and on stalactites and stalagmites. We saw those in the picture. Therefore, magic detection will show virtually every place in the cave as radiating magic. The hollow where he lies is lined with silks and velvet cloths, but no treasure. Just a few feet northwest is a small ledge with a few broken stones. One of these has a portable hole, and inside the portable hole is a whole bunch of stuff. 80,000 gold piece jewel crown, 50,000 gem set orb, a scepter that's worth 65,000 gold pieces, but they all have a curse on them, and so the magic will turn the individual into a wight after sickening and dying. The curse can only be removed by a cleric of 20th level. Then there's also 1,000 gold pieces, 10 gems, a bag of some dust, a staff of striking, and a scroll. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. Now let's talk about this Lich's spell. So the Lich, and what I really want to focus on are from these 9th level spells on. So the Lich has time stop and power word kill, which were massive at this level. The power word kill would just outright kill a player. Big Beast Clenched Fist, again, another spell that could just outright kill a player. Auto's Irresistible Dance, Monster Summoning 6. You could use the time stop to cast that. You could use the time stop to summon a Mordenkainen Sword. Limited Wish, which was nasty. Reverse Gravity, Globe of Invulnerability, Invisible Stalker. You could use time stop to bring an Invisible Stalker forward. Flesh to Stone, Cloud Kill, Cone of Cold, Hold Monster, Teleport, Wall of Force. Can't use the teleport. We've been told you can't teleport. Well, I guess he could teleport up to half a mile away. And a whole bunch, fireballs, lightning bolts, everything else. So not sure why this Lich is here. The Lich's name was Asperdes. So we saw that right there, Asperdes, Lich Asperdes. In some future adventures and things like that, some of the folks from Wizards, this is after Gary left the company, did go back. They did kind of detail Asperdes a little bit. Apparently, he was a Lich that was in the Yeomanry, which is integral in the giant modules that had taken it over, 500 years ago, 600 years ago, and was driven out by the common folk, and then ended up coming here and just hanging out in number 7. So not sure that that's what Gary wanted. He didn't really write anything else about this Lich after that, but I always find it interesting that this Lich is just here and hanging. Then we've got number 8, which is the Side Cavern, and number 8 is essentially in the northwest corner up here. It's over here on this side of the map. Up here, 8 and number 9. And this side cavern is full of gargoyles, 23 gargoyles. And it says, these creatures greatly fear the drow, and they will attack no creature with a drow or wearing drow garb, like those medallions, but they will attack any other creature not so protected. So they're just kind of hanging out here and doing their thing. Number 9 is the stable. And number 9 is over in this section of the map, and it's the stable where they have their pack lizards tethered here near a mound of fungus fodder. And the drow are obviously using these giant lizards as pack animals. And then we come to complexes number 10 through 13, which are up in this area up here. And this is an area for a bunch of ghouls and ghasts that all serve the drow. And my question about this is, how do the drow keep these ghouls and ghasts fed? Because ghouls and ghasts are supposed to have this kind of unending hunger. And they're going to follow, I know they're following the drow because there's clerics with the drow, and the clerics are probably controlling the ghouls and the ghasts, but maybe they're feeding them slaves. I don't know, because a lot of these merchants are coming with slaves. So we've got all of these caves, 10, 11, 12, 13, that are full, 32 ghouls, 4 ghasts, 2 ghasts. There is some treasure in this last one, number 12. It says there, the other is a map showing the northeast passage and the tertiary routes which connect to the primary northwest southeast passages and encounter area S17 through T17. The map shows the latter passages only as shown below. Draw this in for your players on their map. Remember, their map only had the central part of the hexes on it. This, you could have another map drawn and ready to go. So there is a map in this area. And then number 4 are more ghasts. So number 14 is a small cavern that comes off this tunnel that's up here, and it is a giant slug that has just come in here, and it is resting to digest a meal, and it decided to stay because of the excellent food supply. The drow will soon get rid of it, and it doesn't have any treasure, but it is a big old giant slug. And then number 15, which is a little tiny cavern with a plateau, a shelf that is coming off the main huge chamber, is an area with 2 Harako-sphinxes, which are nested here, awaiting the return of their drow mistress and master. They will not attack someone unless the creature comes near them, so within 20 feet, and will come to name command only. They have no treasure, but one has a medallion with a staff of copper set around 8 perfectly matched emeralds, which says Isle Serves on it, and it's worth 24,000 gold pieces. So that is worth some serious cash. Then we come to the Troll Caves, which is 16, 17, and 18, which are down in this area here. And there's 16 is off the main cavern area, and there's a lot of trolls in here. 10, 16, 18 trolls, lots of trolls. There are 44 trolls in here, and this just has to stink. And it says the stench of these caves is noticeable from 10 feet outside the caves. And the trolls will move to support each other, the troglodytes or the bugbears, if they become aware of an attack through information, noise, etc. So this is one of the only places that Gary actually mentions that. I did mention it, but if you've got players coming in this main tunnel and they make a lot of noise, there are a whole bunch of creatures that are going to descend upon them and take them out. We've got a picture of some bugbears here, and then we've got areas 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23, which are up in this area up here. You can see coming off the main drag near that pool, which is number 40. And there are a whole bunch of bugbears in 19 through 23, a whole bunch that are all hunkered down. They all are in service of the drow. It says indirect service. I'm not sure why he used the word indirect, but they're there. They're equipped with armor, morning stars. Then the huge cave at the end is the den. It's like the common room, the den. There are a bunch of female bugbears in here. They all can fight. There's a bunch of young in here. They all can fight. And then there's 10 males in here. And finally, we come to the chief's den here, Grublick, the chief. And he has his son, Bruiseblib, here with him. And they have some treasure as well. And then 26, we got more bugbears. And 27, we've got the sub-chief, Rugdug, and he is in here. He's a large guy. Gary loved to have chiefs and sub-chiefs of each one of these humanoid races. If you look at Caves of Chaos, the orcs all have a chief and a sub-chief. They have like a primary command and a second in command. Bugbears have it. Goblins have it. They all. So my question about all of these bugbears is what happens if they hear something and they all come out at one time. There are roughly 80 bugbears here that could come out and descend upon the players, in addition to all the drow coming out at the same time, all of the ghouls and ghast coming out at the same time. Now you're talking probably over 200 creatures that are going to come out and descend upon the players in this main cavern, and so it'll be a pretty big fight. Okay, then we come to rooms 28 through 30, which are the troglodyte warrens. So the troglodytes are all in here. Anywhere there is a T is a troglodyte guard. So it holds a male, a female, and 2 hatchlings. We've got 28, which is the long cave. There are 36 young males in here. We've got number 29, which is the leaders. There are 4 large troglodytes. Each leader wears a small medallion of a gold hammered into a likeness of a human skull. The 2 elders have rough gems, and on the shelf at the back is a human skull sheathed in gold. So that's kind of their treasure. We have their communal cave, and then 31, which is this big eastern cave over here, which is where all the basic food for this whole complex come from. It's a big fungal farm. So it says this portion of the Great Cavern is filled with fungi patches which the troglodyte tend. The fungi supplies much of the food for the creatures which inhabit the place. So there's paths through it. There's a jug of alchemy in here. We hadn't got the Dungeon Master's Guide, so we don't really know what that is, but it is here. And then we come to 32, 33, 34, and 35, which are all these caverns in the bottom left-hand corner. And they are the troll dens, and they are rewarded with food and wealth by the drow, and the cooperation with the other inhabitants of the cavern has caused them to prosper greatly. So again, all of these creatures work together, and they could cause massive problems for the players. So in 32, we've got the Troll Chief. He's got some treasure here. He's got a bronze statuette, an idol of same, I think he meant to say some, an idol of some weird shark god, which is inlaid with ivory, coral, and pearls. It's worth some money. We don't know what it is. Something Gary put in. There's a pair of lenses here. These crystal devices do not give off any dwemer, for they are not magical, and the wearer will detect nothing when looking through them unless he or she is in the vault of the drow. So that is a thing. And then we've got more trolls here. So all of this stuff down here could precipitate in a lot of problems for the players. And then we've got areas 36, 37, and 38, which are down in the middle area just south of the pool. Again, if there's a T, there's some troglodytes. We've got a guard quarters in 36. 37 are more large troglodytes, and 38 is the chief's lair. It's an old trog that attacks as a 6th dice creature. It's got 2 javelins of lightning and a bunch of treasure and some potions of plant control. Then we've got area 39, which is a big side cavern in the complex near the troglodytes and the fungi farm, which is in the middle. Stabled here at A on chain tethers are 2 wyverns, and we've got a great picture by Errol Otis right here. And somewhere in here, there it is, Errol Otis. And this says 7. He always put like the year, and I think that it says 71, but I don't think that's 71. I think this was 78. But very cool picture of 2 of the wyverns. They're tethered with chains. So we see that there. And they're here. They were raised by the troglodyte chief. They will obey and follow his orders. And they will attack the players. And if they're killed, he's going to be very angry. And then finally, in the very middle of the cavern area, we've got the pool. Body of clear water has no effect upon creatures who drink from it. But it is a magic pool. So there are 89 gems of 10 gold piece value each at the bottom of the pool. They are covered with a light layer of sand. If any of these gems are removed from the pool for more than one turn, 10 minutes, they will turn a like number of gems within 30 feet into stones of 1 gold piece value. That is, they will come down in value. On the other hand, if an individual tosses 1 to 4 gems into the pool, so let's move the map over here, into the pool, then you will find in your possession gems are of better quality, as the effect is more likely to cause 10 gold piece gems to become 50s, 50 gold piece gems to become 100s. The drow merchant, who's in areas kind of 5, 6, 7 area up in the north west corner of the map, the drow merchant knows the secret to the pool, usually tosses only 10 gold pieces in, which means he gets 50s back. The pool radiates a dim glimmer, but the gems are in it do not give off any magical aura. And then we've got a note. This is the end of the adventure. We've got a note. If you're using this module as part of a whole campaign, be certain to keep a careful note of all that the party does. You can do this by writing in the margins of the booklet. And then this ends the first part of the Descent into the Depths. Now, in summary, coming into this, one, I do like the intro that Gary gives with all the hex crawling and the sandbox feel to the map and the random encounters and the details of the random encounters. Some of them are kind of wonky with having liches and vampires just kind of walking around. And then this particular encounter can become extremely deadly, extremely fast, as several hundred opponents can come out in the form of drow, ghast, ghouls, trolls, bugbears, and troglodytes all at once coming out after the party. It could be a complete slaughter. And or the party could take out most of this area in one go in the main cavern complex, and then just basically go in afterwards and search through and grab all the treasure. So all in all, great adventure. And we will continue this video series with a review of D2, Shrine of the Kuo-toa. So hope everybody enjoyed, and I will catch everybody